Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. So today I'm gonna show you this project that I've been working on. It's called React e-commerce project. As we can see here, um, it's available on GitHub. You can see it here. It has links. So this is the GitHub pages of the project. This is the deployment of the project. And this is the GitHub repository of the project, which we are currently viewing. This is the GitHub repository and documentation, and this is Adobe XD design that I was supposed to imitate. This is the design, and this is when we display the cart. So, um, so first of all, the documentation is about the links. What is this project? It's a task for a React e-commerce project. These are the images of the project I'm about to show you right now. My score and the goal and the score. Uh, the total score is I estimate it to be 91% of the requirements of the task. So let me show you the project. So this is the project and this is the design. This is the design. As we can see here, the only required feature was add to cart and displaying this cart. So this was the only required feature. So to add cart functionality, it can be divided in two cases. The first case is when there is no items in the cart, when the cart is empty, and when the cart has items inside. So let's display when the cart is empty. This is when the cart is empty. So we don't have anything in the cart. The cart is empty. And now when we add items to the cart, we press add to cart, and then we wait. And then now we have 5 items in the cart. When we press, we can see that there are items in the cart. Remove, close the drawer, open the drawer again, no items. If we hit refresh, there are no items. And then when we add to the cart, there will be more items. There are 9 items now, quantity 9, and the total is 81. Each one costs 9,000 Egyptian pounds, so the total is 81 Egyptian pounds. Now when we add to already existing, so there is already existing 9 items, so when we add, now there will be 18, and now the quantity is 18 and the price has changed, and this has no maximum, but it has a minimum of 0. So if we keep pressing until 0, we can't reduce beyond 0. So this is how the application. So this is the application. This is the project. I would like to explain the architecture of this application. So basically, the page, this is the page. The application consists of only one single page and several components. So this is the page, which is the home page. This is the page, the home page. And the cart will refresh now. Yeah, we got 18 items in the cart. And we got 2 types of components. We got components, which is this folder. And when we view it on GitHub, let's take a look on GitHub. So src. So this is the src folder, which contains, now let's look at the components. These are server components, which means they don't use hooks as required, and as required in the task, don't use hooks. So the server components here at src/components, they don't use any hooks at all, but we use hooks in these 5 components only. These components are reactive, and we are using state here. These components are the add to cart, which is this add to cart. This is the first one. The second one is cart, which is this one, the cart here. This is reactive. So this is reactive, it's a client component. Add to cart is reactive, it's a client component. The third one is empty drawer, which is empty drawer and items drawer is when this is items drawer, and when we remove, now we have empty drawer. And finally, quantity counter, which is this quantity counter. These are the reactive components that I had to use hooks. I mean, I know the tasks say shouldn't use hooks, but I had to use hooks only at these 5 components to make them reactive. So I would like to explain the architecture of this application. So basically we have here memory. I wouldn't use that. I wouldn't use this architecture. I mean, it's not, I would use the optimum architecture of React if it weren't for these 2 conditions. Don't use hooks and don't use redux. I would use the default architecture of React, but for this I had to create a specific architecture. So we have here 2 variables, 2 variables stored at local storage. So the first one is cart counter, which is this one. The first one is product counter, which is this one. And the second one is cart counter, which is 0 items in the cart. So what happens is that this is like the API. So I'm not using an API, but I'm making these components communicate with local storage. So if I were using, if it weren't for these 2 conditions, I would have used Redux, or I would have used hooks and stored everything in a context, but I had to use the maximum amount of server components due to these 2 conditions. I don't exactly understand the wisdom behind these 2 conditions, but I followed them. So a product owner, product counter, when we hit here or minus, this is updated. The product counter is updated. So now we have here the product counter is 9. The product counter is 9, 10, 11, and this is updated. Now what happens when we hit add to cart? When we hit add to cart, the cart counter will be updated. Will be updated by this value, will be increased by this value. So now it's 4, now it's 8. Now when we add 1, now it will be 11, 13, yeah, 8 and 5, yeah, 13. So the cart is 13. This component updates every 2 seconds. It has a use effect. So let's display it. Use effect, cart. Yeah, this component has a use effect. It updates every 2 seconds to read and update the state of the cart items number. So it updates every 2 seconds to display how many carts. So let's look here. I tried to build this architecture to use the minimum amount of Redux and hooks. I tried. So when we look here, when we hit here, I will increase by number 1, and this will not appear immediately. It will take 2 seconds to appear, to create results. So we have here, it should be 14. I pressed, wait, it's now 14. It now should be 15, 16. It takes 2 seconds, 17. So it takes 2 seconds to update when I press, but this is architecture. So how does it work? The data is stored at the local storage, and then every 2 seconds it takes a look at the cart counter and updates the value. This is the architecture I built, but for these 2 conditions only. Don't use hooks and don't use Redux. Now this is the architecture of the application, and now we look here. So this is the architecture of the application. Now let's move on to the next section, which is the tasks. How many of the tasks have I completed? Actually, I have completed from the tasks, I have completed 91%. 91% of the tasks. I have completed. The tasks were 18 tasks. So the task contained 18 items. I have completed 16 and a half of them. So let's display each one of them. Number 1, the type files, the File types should be JSX and JSX, JS and JSX. This is one, the first one. And the second one, the type file should be .css, .scss. So let's look here, JS and JSX. Beyond the JS and JSX, I have used TSX, which is TypeScript, which is more type safety, which provides more type safety. It's very, the type, it provides more type safety. So basically, we expect what is the type of everything. So the text is gonna be string, the background color is gonna be string, the text color is gonna be string. OnClick is a function, it returns nothing. So we know exactly what to expect. Oh, and by the way, the application I've been displaying is the deployment. It's omarthinks.github.io/react ecommerce project as a task asked me to deployed on GitHub pages. So it's deployed on GitHub pages. It's a Next.js application. Oh, I should add technologies used section. So the technologies used for this project are, I should add technologies used. I have used Next.js and React. I have used the Material UI for the drawer, the side drawer, this drawer. I used the Material UI for it. So let's look at the items, the items of the task. So number one is use JSX. I have used TSX. Number two is TypeScript. TypeScript is beyond JavaScript. It provides more type safety. The type of files should be also SCSS. So this is an SCSS file. It contains the colors. So we have here the primary color, we have on primary, and these colors are used all over the project. So let's take a look. Add colors, and then add colors is used all over the page. So SCSS, these are SCSS colors. They are in the theme folder /colors module SCSS. So let's view them. They are src theme /colors module SCSS. As we can see here, I have used SAS. Please note that my major or my profession is actually React Native. We don't use SAS in React Native, but I have used it here for this project as a task, as an item, a requirement for the task. So we have here colors, we used the colors here, colors all over the place. Empty drawer, you will find that we imported colors from @theme /module SCSS, and we used the color for everything. Quantity, everything will, if you open any page, I don't use colors normally. I don't use the normal colors. I use the SCSS colors. Size option, colors, spacer has colors. So for all the components, I have used the SCSS. So as we were here, the file types should be SCSS. As we can see here, I have used, this is the SCSS file, and these are the colors exported by this file. So primary color, you will find it here, for example. Colors.light gray, this is colors.light gray, this is it. This is the definition of the variable, and it's light gray. And so this this item is completed. Now let's move on. Folder structure, public images. So we can see here in the public, these are the images, the next.svg and the first sale.svg. The second one is dynamic images. So as we can see here, src/images, src/images. So these are the images where src/images here. So let's take a look. src/images, these are the images I'm using all over the project. So here they are. This is the first image. The second image is shirt 2. This is the third image. This is the fourth one is shirt 4. This is it. And as we can see here, so src/images, src/services. Actually, as I have explained, I didn't use an API. So I'm not like adding a check mark or not completed. I'm just keeping it. I used a different architecture to keep minimal storage of usage of hooks and redux. So I'm not adding this as completed or not completed because I have used a different architecture. src/components for React components. As I explained, I used a different architecture to fit the task, which is shouldn't use hooks and shouldn't use redux. src/components for other React components. Yeah, sure. So basically the components are two types: server components and client components. So let's take a look at the server components folder and the client components folder. Server components, these are the server components. They are not reactive at all. And the client component, these components are 5 components. They are reactive and they use hooks. Only there I use hooks. So the src/components, let's take a look. src, we have the components and we have the client components. So this is the components folder and this is the client components folder. This is for the task of use src/components, src/pages. I have used only one page. I didn't use too many pages. So if we open up the src/app, we will find this page. It is here. I know the pages exist, but it's empty. So this is the home page. So src/app, this is the home page. And these are the pages of the project. Data should be passed via props or returned via an API. This is the only thing I couldn't do, as I explained, to keep this don't use redux and don't use hooks. So passed via props and returned via an API, this means that the components have to be reactive and there should be a context or should be redux, but it says don't use redux or don't use. So I find it a little bit, I don't know, maybe conflicting. My major or my specialization is React Native, so for React Native we use hooks a lot. Like, it's okay to use hooks, but for Next.js, I understand that for Next.js you have to use to maximize server components, but I couldn't imagine the architecture that wouldn't use. So this is the only one I couldn't complete. I used a different architecture to avoid using hooks. As I said, I stored everything in local storage and accessed this data from the local storage. Should depend on 2 colors. So sure. So let's take a look at the colors. Primary color, as it says here, should depend on primary color and secondary color. So this is the primary color. It's SCSS color, and there is on primary, on secondary color, and on secondary. So these are the colors I have used. So I considered this to be done. Should use lazy loading, sure. So basically I have used 2 components. Should use at least once lazy loading. So I have done 2 lazy loading items. The first one is items drawer and the second one is items empty drawer. So let's review that. How was this implemented? So let's hit here refresh. Now when we press F12 and then we go to sources and then we go to not sure where is the folder. So apparently this is a production build, so it's not like the production build has everything hidden, because when I run it on the development build it appears more, but apparently the production build is not as obvious, so everything is hidden for the production build. So this is a production build, it's a deployment production build, so nothing, so the code is hidden. But if I want to display the code, I should run a development build. So okay, so let's hit here refresh. As we can see here, when we press here, you will see for a second loading. You will see the loading sign for 1 second. Loading. Have you seen it? It only appears once. So basically this is lazy loading. This means that it only, when we hit refresh, we have to hit refresh to display it again. I will show you the loading. It's not loaded. It's not loaded until we call it. So basically it's like the application doesn't know this component even exists. So it's not loading, but it's not, the application doesn't know this component until we use it, until we have to use it. So when we hit here refresh, loading for 1 second, as we have seen, and then the drawer displays is displayed. But once it has loaded, it doesn't need to load again. It doesn't need to show us that it's loading again. So if we wanted to show, so this is for the items drawer. So let me show you also the lazy loading of the empty drawer. When I hit here remove, it says loading. Why? Because this empty drawer was loading, but once it's loaded, it doesn't need to be loading again. Why? Because it's been downloaded from the server. So for every refresh, we will see one loading. For every refresh, we will see one loading of each component of this component. So these are lazy loading, and not only lazy loading, but actually we are surrounded with suspense. So this is the loading that appears. This is the loading, H1 loading and H2 loading. This is the loading that appears. This is it, loading, as we have seen here. This is it. So so let's go back to the task. So yeah, I have implemented lazy loading. Shouldn't use hooks. I did my best to avoid using hooks. I used minimal hooks. So the hooks, as we have seen, the components are server components. They don't use hooks. So let's take a look at the code of this. The hooks, the components, for example, the button, it doesn't start with use client, as we can see here. It just starts with imports. It doesn't start with use client. As we can see here. But the client component, they use hooks. They start with use client, and here we have reactive items, reactive things. The cart is full of reactivity, and so I would give myself a half for this task, for this item, because I only used hooks in the task. The only required functionality is add to cart. I had to make this add to cart reactive. So I only used hooks in client components. They are only 5 components. So this is the folder of client components. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have only used hooks in 5 components. Shouldn't use Redux. Now let's look at the installs. Package.json. Redux is not even installed. So let's click here. Redux. Redux is not even installed. So I didn't use Redux, so I considered this item to be done. The only required functionality is to add to cart. Add to cart functionality has 2 cases. Cart icon should have a badge containing 0 when the cart is empty. So let's take a look. This is the website, omarthinks GitHub.io. So the cart is empty. So we have no items. So yeah, I considered this done. Clicking on the top cart icon should show empty cart drop down. So when we hit here, empty cart drop down. So it's a side drawer. and as we can see here, the side drawer says you have no items yet. Non-empty cart. Now let's put items in the cart. Now we have added 5 items in the cart. Cart icon should have a badge containing the number of cart items, as we can see here, 5. Clicking on the top cart icon should show cart items drop down. This is it. Now of course we can add, so we have 5. Now let's add another 6, that should be 11. Now we have 11 items in the cart, 11 items and the price. And of course we can remove. So I consider this to be done. In both cases, pressing the add to cart button should increment items by the quantity. Done. Task should be delivered as a GitHub public repository. As we can see here, this is the GitHub public repository. This is the GitHub public repository. Here is the source folder. And finally, task should be deployed on GitHub pages. So task should be deployed on GitHub pages. This is the deployment on GitHub pages. So I consider this my score to be 91% and a half. One last thing I will do is that I will upload this video on YouTube, and I will put the link here. And also I will add technologies used. Technologies used is React and Next and the Material UI for the side drawer. So I have submitted the task. This is the submission. Thanks a lot. See you later.